This is a tutorial for how to create a Beyblade X stadium stand. You can see it here, all folded up. It's collapsible for easy transport and pretty easy to put together. It's in 3 parts, so you've got, this is the main part which holds the stadium, and you've got the base. Let's get a better angle on this. There we go. Put it together. Now if you're putting on events for young kids, or just young kids are playing, you can just have this bit and it works just fine. It's also about the same height as the official Takara stadium stands, but for people who hate leaning over, there is the base of the stand, which you can slot it into just like this. There you go. And it's got these little platforms for putting your bays and launchers and whatever on. And there we go. Drawn Brave. Functional Beyblade X stadium stand for Takara bays. Now I'm going to show you how to build it. Alright, so the materials you're going to need for this are 4 sheets of 90 by 60 centimeter core flute, some duct tape, 2 or 4 rulers, and to make it you will need a measuring tape, something to cut it with. I'm going to use a box cutter. And I find helpful to have something long and straight, such as this blade, whatever, and some clamps to hold it down. That helps me cut the core flute in straight lines instead of just doing it freehand. Yeah, so to get started, I'm just going to get started with the base of the stand. Now, for me, I am going to be making 2 stands at once, so I'm going to be cutting it up a little bit differently than if I was only making 1. I am also using a combination of 5mm and 3mm core flute. The 5mm provides strength and stability, so I'm going to use it for the base of the stand as well as the plate that holds up the stadium. Whereas I'm going to be using 3mm for the upper part of the stand, which will make it a little bit fold down smaller, and it'll be a little bit more flexible to make it easier to put together and take apart with the base plate, which I'll show you later. Alright, so I'm going to start by measuring the midpoint of this sheet and marking it. And at the other side. Let's get a better camera angle. There we go. So I've made small marks here and here, and I get my object, which in this case is a blade from an air conditioner. Up. I grab my knife and for 5mm core flute, I usually cut it a little bit at a time. If you can find core flute with the grain running horizontal or widthwise, I guess, that definitely makes it easier, as then you can just cut along one of the grains instead of having to fight against the thick part of it. I've already messed up this line a bunch, but it doesn't really matter too much. Alright, so now I have these 4 60 by 45 centimeter sheets of core flute, and the next thing I need to do is cut 2 of them in half again. So I get this out, I measure to 22 and a half. And I've started using a piece of core flute as a ruler instead of the air conditioner blade because it wasn't very good. And the core flute works just fine as long as I'm careful not to cut into it while I'm cutting the other piece of core flute. Now I have 2 half pieces. Alright, so now I've got 4 of these smaller sheets and 2 of the larger sheets, and the next step is to tape them together. So I'm going to start with the smaller sheets. I'm going to find the straightest edges they have in order to make a smooth joint. And I get the duct tape. Make sure it's all nice and straight. And tape it up. Not perfect, but good enough. Next step, fold it over, and now I've got to tape it up while folded, and this creates the folding joint. There we go. Now we have a jointed piece of core flute, and it will only fold one way, not both ways, so this side will go, this will be on the outside and it will fold inwards. Alright, next step is to tape the big pieces and the small pieces together. The important thing here is you want to make sure you've got the joints going the right way, so when you're doing this one, you want to think about the fact that it needs to fold like this, so you want to make sure it's folding this way when you're taping it on the flat side. Alright, and now it is all taped up, and I've got a collapsible, lovely thing that can become a stand. Now the last joint of the stand is always very tricky to do. I figured out a trick while I was putting together the second base that makes this a little bit easier, which is you leave these little flaps till last, and that way you can tape it up. Thank you, Sharpie Cats, you're so helpful. And that way you can tape it up nice and flat without having to deal with trying to tape it up on the inside. Okay, so I'm interrupting that last clip to say that I realized that much easier to just, if you have done it like I was saying, and so you have the long strip and this is the last connection you have to make, then all you have to do is lay it flat and then you can tape it nice and easy. And then you just sort of, the way I did it at least was you sort of hold it like this. It's still a bit tricky, but you can put tape on one side, push it over to the other side and finish doing the tape. So it goes okay. Put tape there, push it, and then fold it over to finish it off. So that's a way to do it without too much difficulty. All that's left to do is create the slots for it to go in the base. Now I did a little bit of trigonometry, believe it or not. It actually came in useful after high school. And I calculated that the slots need to be 13 centimeters in from the sides in order to create good triangles, or basically equal measurements across the whole thing. So I put in measurement. The actual measurement is like, the calculated number is like 13.18, but you know, it's not like this thing was created that precisely. So it's nothing we need to worry about that much. The great thing about plastic and duct tape is that if you don't get the measurements exactly right, you can sort of just squish it together until it works. Alright, now I can stand it up. And now from each of these, I want to make markings 10 centimeters down. Now I've made all my markings, and it's time to start cutting. Alright, got my knife. Now I never quite figured out a good width to make the slots. I think generally I just make them too small, so this time I'm going to try making them a bit wider, which should make the stands a bit easier to put together, hopefully. So this is about 1.5 centimeters wide. We'll see how we go. That's one slot done. Alright, I'm going to cut out the rest of these. Alright, so I've finished the bottom part. Now the next step is to start on the top part. And the first step of that is we've got this 3mm board here, and I'm going to cut it up into 4 pieces. The first cut I want to make is just cutting it in half yet again. So I measure out 45 centimeters. It is very convenient that the Beyblade Stadium is 45 centimeters and the usual size of a core flute sheet is 90 by 60, as that makes it very easy to just cut it in half and get the right measurements and without producing much waste. Now next step is we get the measure tape again, and we want to measure 37.5 centimeters. So now I've got two pieces. And then with this one, I need to cut it a little bit shorter. So it is also 37.5 centimeters. Alright, and as you can see, now I have the wide pieces and the middle pieces. So this is half the size of this, and I'll have 4 of these, 2 of these, and I will fold down into a single thing. So I'm going to cut up this one in the same way I cut up this, and then I'll get the last 2 of these pieces from another sheet, which we'll get to soon. Alright, so I finished cutting those up. So I've got a bunch of small pieces and a bunch of large pieces, but I need more small pieces in order to finish the top. So now I'm going to cut up this last piece. Now the way I'm doing it is I'm making 2, so I can split the base plates and the walls among 2 different sheets. However, there is a way to cut up one sheet to make a base plate and the remaining walls, and I'm going to put up a picture of how that works now. But for now, I'm just going to show up how I'm going to cut it up for making 2 at once. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is cut 15 centimeters off the end. Now the way I am doing it is partially informed by the grain of the core flute, and the fact that by cutting it in this order, a cut later on will be easier to make. Because cutting this way is easier than cutting this way, so when I want to cut with more precision, I'd rather make it this way. And this bit is going to be used for the little surfaces you can put your bays on later. Now the next cut I want to make is 45 centimeters across. And this one can also be used for the surfaces later. I want to cut 37.5 centimeters this way. base this way. Now I'm going to cut this on the same way, and it'll be time to put it all together. So now I got two wide pieces, 37.5 by 45 centimeters. So 45, 37.5, and then I got four smaller pieces which are 45 by 22.5, and I put them together in much the same way as I did the base earlier. So I grab this, put them together, get some tape. A little bit easier now that it's not so big. Alright, now the last bit, I've got top parts, and bottom parts. The last bit is the base plate, which the stadium rests on. Now this is pretty simple, it's just a couple of squares. So first thing I'm going to do is, once again, measure out 45 centimeters, which is the big number with this project. Alright. And now I'm just going to cut these pieces down to 45 centimeter squares. Got Wesley here helping me. Thank you, Wesley. Lovely. And now I've got my base plate. Alright, so I've got my taped up base plate, I've got the top part here, and the next thing I've got to do is tape the rulers onto here and cut the holes into this so that they can fit together. So first I'm going to measure ten centimeters in from the sides. So yes, 10 centimeters in. Alright. And I grab a ruler and I cut it in half. You couldn't just use like 4 rulers, you know, like the 50 cents or whatever, so just pay the extra $1 for some more rulers, but I figure why use more rulers when, you know, I got this cutting tool here. You can also probably just snap it, I guess, but you know, be careful of splinters going flying. Or if you've got some other tool you've got lying around that you can use, but yeah, this is what I do. So just give it a bit of a squeeze just at the edge to create that weakness. And there they go. Alright, now the great thing about using rulers is that angle is that you can use them to measure how much you're sticking out. So I like to have it so it's just a centimeter sticking out, because that's all you really need. You're only going through 3 millimeters of core flute anyway. There you go. But once again, yeah, if you want something more secure, you can have it sticking further out the side. That's another option. And I like to use a fair bit of tape to keep this thing in. And I especially want to make sure I have tape around the jagged end here. Alright, so I'm going to finish putting these on and then we'll cut the holes. Alright, so it's all taped up. I'm going to tape it up properly later, but I'm running out of tape, so I've just done this for now. Next step is to cut the holes into this thing. Now, this is something that I think probably would have been easier if I'd done it before I finished taping it all together, but you live and you learn. So 10 centimeters down is where I want the holes. That's how I usually do it. And then of course 10 centimeters across. So yeah, as you can see, this is where my hole will be. Now my rulers are 4 centimeters wide, whatever rulers you get may be different. So I just want to make sure I also put another dot, 6 centimeters. My first dot was there luckily. And that's where I will make the hole. Now this is a situation where if the grain of the core flute was going the other way, it would be way easier. You just do a nice little cut along with the grain. But it's not so hard. I can even, with a cut this small, I can even just freehand it. And I want to make another cut, not too far below the first one. Go. Do a quick test, see if it fits. That's wonderful. Alright. I'm going to finish putting holes in this. Yeah, once again I forgot that you can just lay these things flat, which is going to make this whole process a lot easier. And I can see already that I put this a little bit off from 10 centimeters. That's better. Alright, now I've cut all the holes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Moment of truth. Alright, attempt number 2. And voila, there we go. Grab a stadium, and a little stadium stand. Alright, here we go. It's all cut up. Now, once again, I will tape all this up when I'm done, but I'm running out of tape, so that'll have to wait till tomorrow. But I've got my top piece. And it slides in. And there we go. Stadium stand. Let's get a stadium in this thing. Wonderful. Alright, so I got my level and I put it on, and I can see that it's a little bit off. That one looks mostly alright. That one is pretty far off. And that one looks mostly alright. But yeah, it looks like the holes could use some adjustment to make sure everything's level. But other than that, that is pretty much how you make the stand. Alright, so got it pretty much all done. I've taped up all the edges. Had to go to the shops to get some more tape. Last step is taping on the little platforms. So, roll tape. There we go. So I'm going to start off by getting a length. And very carefully placing it on the edge, pulling it back, putting it in place. Want to make sure it's pretty much centered, and I push the tape on. Oh, I didn't quite get it fully on there. That's fine. It doesn't need to be. Alright, and next I've got to get the underside. So very carefully, and this one I want to make sure it's up so it becomes a hinge. There we go. And to finish it off, I've got some Velcro tape. You don't even really need it if you're keeping it somewhere secure where it's not going to flap about. But I like to have it as an option. And Velcro is a very useful tool. That's perfect for this situation. I just can't get the other side of the tape. There we go, at least I know it's going to stick well. Alright. And I push it up and hold it on. Alright, that's good enough. And here we have the finished product. Everything's all taped up. Things are on the stadium's in the stand. And that's pretty much it. You know, if you got any questions or you got any ideas for how it can be improved, please let me know in the comments, and I'll be sure to respond. Thank you very much for watching.